Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now.
Oh, you said you thought I had really good energy. I just bring, I try to always be positive, and even though there tends to be a lot of negativity, I think I try to be the eternal optimist, because it is not difficult to compound energy in a negative sense, but it's if you can, I think energy is a bit like smiling. If you can contribute a small amount of positive energy, that'll start a momentum, just like smiling and yawning does. So you can either compound the negativity or you can compound a positivity. So I prefer to look at the energy and compound the positivity of it.
I understand.
What I do is to try and bring in build positive workplace environments, because I know from a lot of time working and building high performance teams that when somebody is happy in their environment, when they enjoy the people they work with, when they enjoy the job that they work in, and they can make the decisions around their job, they're going to be happier, they're going to be more productive, and they're going to enjoy their work. So that's, people think it's difficult to build a high performance team. It can be if they're not positive around it, and they don't look at what it requires to have happy employees. Happy employees will be hugely more productive if you give them the right environment.
You know what? I believe that, but I'm going to come on the polar opposite of that.
Yep.
Not that I'm a Debbie Downer, but I want you to really kind of
justify
tighten up the bootstraps, okay? But Brains, before we get started, because we got started before we got started, I want to welcome you back to On the Edge, the place where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. We have Dr. Brenda Jamnik, all the way from Australia. We're going to talk about some organizational leadership. Now, if you look at some of my previous wonderful interviews, wonderful guests, but leadership is different. And Brains, you cannot lead if you've never followed, okay? So you have to understand what that looks like, and what is the paradigm, what is the benchmark for today's leader. We're going to talk to Brenda about that. She's also going to be a keynote speaker at the Women's Economic Forum. Now, that's not just money. We're talking global economics. I'm going to ask her a little bit about what people have to look for and to listen to in that upcoming speech. And she was a woman in the construction industry. That's a trailblazer. Now, here in San Diego, I have been privy to speak at the Women's Construction Forum for women that are in construction. I mean, plumbers and drywalls and cement trucks and all that kind of stuff. But they are ahead of their time. They really are. And they're very innovative. How can we pour that knowledge into young women, into STEM? Have them creating solar panels, putting them third world countries. There's a lot of opportunity in that. So how are we able to branch out? We're going to talk to her about that and a whole lot more. Let's welcome her to the show. We're going to switch back and forth. I like Dr. B. Sometimes you call her Brenda. How are you doing, Brenda? Welcome to On the Edge.
Yeah, thanks, April. Fabulous to be here. It's a beautiful day. I live on the Sunshine Coast, which is on the eastern coast of Australia, where lots of people come for holidays, and I'm fortunate to be able to live here.
Well, you are very fortunate. I've been there. I love Australia. I love Australians. You guys have been uberly kind to me. I mean, you are like 20% of my audience, so it's a lot there. And I do believe that it is the portal to the next entry to civilization. Brains, I've told you that a million times. There's an energy, there's a synergy there, there's a synchronicity there. If we can bring in the harmony and humanity and culture and resources and finances to everyone that resides on that continent, It's going to be a wonderful transition. Really, really is.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you show up in the world. Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, how do I show up in the world? Oh, people Google me a bit. I go a little bit under the radar because, as you said, being a trailblazer, being a woman in construction, sometimes you really do have to have a level of resilience
Yes.
that will enable you to achieve what you need to achieve. And I have developed a lot of resilience over the time. And some of that resilience comes not only from working in that industry, but working internationally. And the resilience is, people misunderstand resilience, but part of resilience is gratitude. So, I've done work in developing countries, and when you have someone as assisting you say, can I leave early so I can pick the pumpkin leaves on the way home to feed my son this afternoon? Those sorts of things build a level of gratefulness and resilience, and those acts are what can help you in understanding how to work with people and lead people, because it gives you a more extended and greater focus outside of your own little bubble.
Well, I get that, but the job needs to be done. And a lot of times in work environments, people are not into coddling and hand holding. Okay, you've got a job to do. I need you to do this. If you need to take it home, if you need to come in on Saturday, we want to create a balance, work-life balance. That's why entrepreneurship, people think that it's the way to go. But what you have to understand is that you're on that 24-hour clock because you're always churning and burning the business. So when you are an independent contributor to an organization, you also have to understand that this is a business and this is your job. How as employees do we work with our employer to create our harmonious place? Because I'm not saying you're saying this, but I'm just saying sometimes.
I think it's a little bit different. I think that many employees don't have the resilience to be able to speak with their employers. They're rather scared of losing their jobs. We've all got bills to pay, the electricity, the rent, all those sorts of things. And the employee is not trained to be able to say that to the employer, hey, look. So I think it's really up to the boss, the employer, the supervisor. And it's not complex at all. It can be as easy as, these budgets have to be finished by Thursday night. What in those budgets are you struggling with? What do you need from me? What do you need to be able to, what's preventing you from getting them done by Thursday night? So I think that rather than telling, it's more about questioning, because if an employer tells, the employee doesn't ask because they're too scared. They're scared of losing their job. They're scared of them being seen as not competent in doing the job, all those sorts of things. And that's where it wastes time, because then it's not done by Thursday night because they don't know how to ask, hey, look, I don't know how to do this part of the job. But if the supervisor or whatever says to them, I need this done by Thursday night, can you get it done by then? Or what's preventing you from getting done? What do you need by me? What shortfalls have you got?
Right.
It leaves them open to be able to say those things.
But an employee also has to come with a can-do attitude.
Of course.
I already know what you can't do, but provide me some options or some choices. So I understand what you're saying. If I am the manager, I come to the employees and say, hey, this is what we need to do. Have that dialogue, have that communication. But again, it is about question and answer. It's not about dictating what someone does, because they may not have the skill set. They may not have the equipment. They may not have the parts. They may not have the man hours. They may not have the budget. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to a project. So today's leader has to be a thought leader. I believe that they have to be proactive instead of reactive. They
Absolutely.
shape and find out what is the needs of the future. You need to project to the future. You can't do things, here where it's such a kerfuffle in the United States. And I tell people all the time, you cannot fight a 21st century war with 1960 tactics. You've got to look at what your manpower is. You've got to look at things like AI. You've got to look at the millennial workforce. You've got to look at, world currencies. You've got to look at the dynamics of personalities now. There's a lot. So when it comes to leadership, what are we looking for in a leader?
Are we looking for their ability to be able to get an environment that brings out the strength in all of their staff?
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. There's a company here on the Sunshine Coast who particularly targets people with disabilities, particularly people with intellectual disabilities, as their employees, because they know their strength and the particular type of disability. They know that strength is if they learn something and they do it well, they will do it well over and over and over again. And they'll do it at a really good standard. And so what they do is they don't say people with a disability can't contribute. They say people with this particular type of disability are a value add. I will recognise them. I will employ them. Why? Because they've found a strength in what they can do. Yeah. But if you try and give that to a person who's got, came out of college or, as we say, uni or a graduation, and they want diversity, you can't give them that. They will last a week and say, I've done that, I'm bored now. So it's up to a leader to be able to have those discussions and see. And also to have the fortitude to step up and say, I've recruited you into this job and I've made a mistake. So, it really is a connectivity, and it is the fortitude to stand up and say, I've made the mistake. I've put you in that wrong job. You're not suited to that job. We both made that mistake, but I was the one as the leader that made that final decision. We have to be able to stand up and count ourselves when we're wrong as well.
Exactly. And that's what a leader does. A leader is a person that is accountable. Yep. The buck stops with you.
Well, this is
good, bad, or indifferent. The buck stops with the leadership, the management.
Well, this is where some people get it wrong, because they say, oh, it was your responsibility too. And what they don't realise is that there's a quadrant around that. Mm-hmm. There's the role, the responsibility, the authority, and the accountability. And the role is usually the title. The responsibility is what you're meant to be doing. The authority is what decision you've got over being able to do that. And the accountability is where the buck stops with you. So, when you look at this, a lot of people will take on the role and responsibility. They might even take on the authority. But without accountability, it's a bit like putting a coffee on the coffee table, and what happens? It's imbalanced. It falls off every time, and you get splashed and burned every time. Mm-hmm. So unless you have those four things in that quadrant evenly, and people know it, can you make this decision on? And I put myself in the spot one time. I was at an Industrial Relations Commission hearing, and it was we were negotiating a settlement. And I thought the settlement was fair. And I said to the then legal counsel, I said, I think that's fair. We need to, and we'll go with that. And he looked at me, covered my butt, and he said, look, do you really have the authority to make that decision? I went, good point. My role was to represent the company. My responsibility was to be there to make sure the negotiation was acceptable. I had the authority to attend. I was accountable for it, to making sure it was settled, but I didn't have sufficient delegation to make the final decision on the amount of dollars, because it was higher than what my delegation was. So until people understand that quadrant, they are not going to be able to achieve it. And it goes right up the chain and down the chain. No matter where you sit in that organisation, you need to have that quadrant.
Yeah, you do. And again, you have to have respect for...
Oh, absolutely.
Mutual respect. I know when I work in an organization, I don't even remember the last time I worked in a corporate job. I was trying to think. It was strange to me. I don't know if I would know how to behave. But when I was there, I knew everybody from the CEO down to the janitor, because everybody plays an intricate part. Everyone has a role and a responsibility to do whatever it is to make this machine churn and burn. And it's not just about, yes, we want to look at the bottom line. Are we increasing revenue? Are we making money? But it's more than that. Longevity, sustainability. What are we bringing to the next generation? Are we mentoring the next generation? I look at that. I look at like, I'll just use.
Can I just stop you there and come back to what you just said there?
Yes.
Because one of the things where you said everyone plays their part, and I'm particularly strong on this, and as you mentioned, I've worked in construction and I've worked in some of the jobs that are multi-billion-dollar jobs, so they're big jobs. So if you've got a team that's not producing, you're burning a lot of money if that team is not producing. And I'll sometimes say, who do you think the most important person on this job is? Now, I personally believe they're all equally important because they are there to perform a role. But there are some people who have higher financially paid roles who think they're more important. And there's a expression in Australia that we call a Peggy. A Peggy is a lady or a man who goes around, and they're the ones that clean the toilets, that clean the rubbish bin, that make sure that
I'm sorry, what did you call it again?
The toilet, the Peggy. Like a Peggy.
You call it the Peggy?
A Peggy. I don't know why it's called that. It's called
I don't know, but I love all of your little idioms. I love them. Yeah. So I gotta write that down in my list. She's a Peggy. Okay.
Yeah, or he. But what happens is, you think if you go into the crib hut's where they go in and have lunch, right? So it's usually a demountable. It's set up with tables, chairs, air conditioning, ice machines, and microwaves. And it's where you go in, heat up your lunch or toast your sandwich, fill up your drink bottle with ice. But what happens if you go in there and the microwave's dirty? You can't find a fork to eat your spaghetti bolognese that you got left over from dinner last night. All of those sorts of things. What happens is, if you've got guys there that, they're on $100,000 a year and you've got 10 or 12 of them sitting there for an hour waiting to use the next fork, that's a whole lot of lost productivity. It's up to the Peggy to make sure that that's there. So you can't tell me that they're not a critical part of that. So when everyone looks at that role and what the role is, I always say to them, 2 questions. Let me ask you, what do you contribute to this job? My second question to them is, what impact would it be on that job if you were away for a month?
Right.
And you think about it, and I'll give you an American example. If your current leader, Mr. Trump, was away from America for a month, what impact would the everyday person feel? Don't answer the question, but think about the second.
I will say, like we had a colonic.
But I will ask you this second question: if all of the rubbishmen, all the people that collected the trash and the rubbish around everywhere, all the suburbs everywhere, went away for a month, what would happen then?
Oh, absolutely.
So often, what we try and do as leaders is that we need to understand and respect what the contribution of everybody at every single level makes, because if they don't make that contribution, it has a flow-on effect to everybody else.
And whatever job you have, bring a standard of excellence to what you do. If you want the Peggy, you be the best Peggy there is. Those are the best bathrooms in the whole entire building. If you are a CEO, you are a person that respects the inverted pyramid, down, up above. And so it's all about the environment too. How we get along, not just with upper management, but how we get along with our coworkers. I was in the hospital with my mother, and it was during COVID. And it was just crazy. But I looked around and I felt so comfortable, because the nurses would say to one another, hey, did you check on that patient? Do you need some coffee? You're looking kind of tired. You want to sit down? You want to have a break? I'll follow up. I'll do this. It was just like a musical dance. They were loving on each other, and I felt so comfortable. Because if they cared about one another, then they were going to take good care of my mother.
Yep,
There was
exactly.
no question about that. And in the work environment, the same place. If you've got a person that you see is buried under in a project and you got a little extra time, there might be an opportunity for you to learn, develop, and grow your skill set.
Exactly. Well, that's why I wrote a book. I wrote a book called The Science of Happy Employees. And I can actually measure what you're talking about. There is psychosocial safety in the work environment. How are people connected? How much do they enjoy their work? How much are they micromanaged? I can actually put data behind it. I can put figures behind it and measure it. But what you're talking about there is people talk about organizational culture. And yes, the organizational culture is about the psychosocial safety. And what happens is people say, oh, well, it's just the vibe. Well, of course it is, because it's part of what the energy that people come off. And we know that when we walk into, and we learn it as a kid, we walk into the kitchen and mum and dad are looking at each other. We go, oh, I shouldn't have come in now.
Right.
They've had an argument. The same in a work environment. It's that energy, and people call it the vibe, and yes, it is. But what happens is they say, oh, I put a lot of work into building my culture, so I'm going to have a team building day. No, it doesn't work like that. Let's look at some what is causing people to feel unsafe in their work environment. And it comes back to what I was saying before. Can they walk up to their supervisor, their boss, their team leader and say, hey, look, I'm not going to make it on Thursday because I really don't know how to use X, Y, Z, and I don't know who else does. They've got to feel comfortable to do that. We can measure that. And measuring that gives you the ability to be able to make sure that people can do their job. They can be happy about doing their job, because what happens, they're not happy to doing their job. They go home, they're grumpy. What happens when they're grumpy when they go home? It creates grumpiness in the house. What happens to it? It brings that grumpiness back to work the next day. It's a vortex. It's a cycle. So it's got to be broken somewhere.
Okay, so now what do you say to the disruptive, crazy workplace? Where do we begin? Where do we begin to break down barriers and start building some sort of trust?
Okay, so I was talking to a CEO of a rather large government-owned corporation about this, and I said one of the things is within the business you build a values base. So what is that values base? It might be respect for each other, respect for the equipment we work with and the environment that we work in, right? So what does that mean? And then we might have integrity. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, on time and to quality. You have a number of these values, but you don't just do the workshop and put them on the wall. What you do is you live them. So when someone submits you poor work, you'll go, wait a minute, is this your best work? Did you really submit this with integrity? Why didn't you come back to me with it? What was preventing you from coming back with me? So we start by having some values set, and then being not only just pinning them on the wall, but by educating people in how to apply them in their work environment. And then you can say to somebody when they tell you in a really inappropriate way to go in a different direction, you can actually say to them, hey, wait a minute, was that respectful communication? You can hold people accountable to their behaviours and communications when you've got a framework or a value set that everyone knows how to use, because it sets the standard.
That makes sense.
And so setting that standard means that you can train them to be able to work into that.
That makes perfect sense. That's very logical. Tell us a little bit about, is this what you're going to present at the Economic Summit, or what else?
In the one in Malaysia I am, and it's called Leading Across Borders, the Influence of Women in Building a Global She Economy. And it's exactly this. It's talking about how to build that foundation base of respect, and what we can do in how we can understand and train people to have a common language around the work environment so they can hold each other accountable in a respectful way. And in doing that, what happens is we create a happy work environment, because we don't have to keep everyone happy all of the time, and we don't have to agree all of the time. What we need to have is a framework to understand how to disagree and how to come back from that.
Right.
And that's part of that. Because,
And I'm a
people say,
firm
oh,
believer. I'm a firm believer in agreeing to disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable.
absolutely. And I'm an accredited mediator. And one of the things I will say to people is, I don't expect you to agree all the time. And sometimes you will have discussions that you think is going to end up in not being the best discussion. And I've got to share with you, I had these two, and they really did not get on, but they had to because they had to work together. So I said to them, you need a key word. And the key word that you say means that I'm about to tell you that we're going to stop this discussion, both think about our position and start again at a later time. And the key word was pineapple, because it really had to be a key word that stopped the flow of conversation. You couldn't say, I'm finding this conversation.
When I'm traveling with girlfriends, this is our signal right here. Like, I've had enough. Okay, I'm going to the room. You have to have a point where you can allow some grace. And that grace,
That's right.
is space to breathe. You
That's
have
right.
to be able to inhale, but also exhale. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. It's like a bullet. Once fired, you cannot get it back.
No, that's right.
And so what you have to do is you have to also be strategic. That's what I tell women in business. Yes, I'm speaking to women right now. Sometimes we talk too damn much. Okay?
Yep.
All that jaw jacking. Sit back and learn to listen.
Yeah.
Because you are going to miss some key information. You may be able to color in that white space where nobody else has been able to do it. But if you are over talking, if you are posturing and pontificating, if you are living the imposter syndrome, that you have to be this, what is it? What's the other term that you guys use all the time? If you are experiencing the tall poppy syndrome, see, I'm learning. But if you are experiencing some of these characteristics and you're wondering why you're not getting the results or the respect that you feel that you deserved, it's an opportunity for you to do some mirror work.
Yep, exactly.
And allow your people to, as long as they're respectful, as Dr. Brenda said, allow them to come back and say, you know what? I really don't think that is suited for us. I don't think it's working for us. Do we have other options or choices? If you come back with a soft sell, you might get a little bit more flexibility and not be so unyielding. You don't have to be a woman in a man's pantsuit.
No, exactly. I was facilitating a board meeting in the construction industry. There were 12 men and me. There was a new person around the board table that particular day, and we were making decisions. And what I used to do is to keep them on track. I'd go, guys, you're going around in circles here. This is what you've said. This is I'm hearing the trend. Is this the decision? And the new fellow on the block said to me, oh, and Brenda, you will type these up and give them back to us, won't you? And to which the chairman of the board looked at him and said, Brenda doesn't type. She will take photos and send them to you. You can have them type whoever you like. So that was a really good example to me of one person making a stereotype that, oh, well, and this is quite a few years ago when there were even less women in the construction industry than there are now. And it was a really good way that the chairman of the board actually understood we're all in this room to contribute on an equal platform. You do not delegate that to someone just because you think she's female, she's going to type it up. And he said that way. And I always say to them, I'll take photographs, or you can take photographs with your phone, not a problem. And then you can do with it what you like. But when I facilitate it with color codes because that connects in their brain. And I'll say, remember we're talking about that orange bit that said, okay, that's what you're doing now, and it connects. So we do get those, and there is possible ways to integrate, which he did at that time, because he felt the new guy on the block was being disrespectful. But he didn't say to him, hey, you're being disrespectful. He said, you can take the photos, or you can get the photos and you can have them done. So he just shifted across really easily. That's about having support from the top for everybody. And he treated everyone in that room exactly the same. It was fabulous.
How did you find yourself in the construction industry?
Interesting. I have been around the construction industry all my life. My father worked in timber. He worked in sawmills. He did timber. Then my husband is a structural and civil engineer, so I was around that. And then Queensland was in drought, and we had a big water treatment project. It was a $9 billion project in the early 2000s to build water treatment plants and pump advanced water. So we weren't getting any rain, and it was dire. And so they needed someone to build a high performance team for a particular water treatment plant. And we were considered the underdog. So we got the smallest water treatment plant. I was there to build a high performance team, had a chairman there who was fabulous. And so they gave us a 34 megaliter a day plant to build. And we had to pump water on first water. We had to be able to produce water on the 19th of December, 2 years later. And we were told we couldn't do it. And so we had some team meetings and we worked, and he was fabulous, this fellow. Darryl was his name. And we ended up building the biggest plant in the shortest length of time of any team, and got recognition for that. And so, because of that, then I just continued. But yes, I had exposure in the construction industry because I did stuff in my husband's business on and off as well. So it's a different field, it's a different language. It's a really exciting thing when you can drive over a road and say, I helped build this road.
That's right. So what would you say to a young 25-year-old female to encourage her to move in that same direction?
I would say understand your own personal drivers, your own personal values, and why you want to do it, and don't let anyone tell you you can't. Find a way, and there are ways, and sometimes those ways you will get shot down for them. I've been held accountable a number of times because I've done things differently. But what happens is, what you do is saying, build some resilience, have the fortitude, find yourself a really good mentor who, when you have a bad day, you can offload on that person who understands the industry. Not your best friend who works as a hairdresser or your mate who works as an IT guy. You need to have a mentor in the industry who understands that industry, because they will then say, well, this is how you can approach them, or in the industry, this is what's done, and this is how you need to do it, or this is how you can change things. So get yourself in there, do the hard yards, but get yourself a decent, confidant mentor who will help you through it to build that resilience in there.
Okay, you have to build that bounce back. Let's ask you some fun questions, Brenda. You seem like you are a big personality, and I appreciate that. I love that because, again, an alpha woman is, tough to take down. But what do you do to relax? What do you do to offboard? And don't tell me about that beautiful sunset from your deck. Tell me.
I garden. I love to grow plants. I have plants through my home. I love to garden, and I love to cook. So if I can get fresh veggies and cook it, and I will experiment with cooking, so I had some people over for dinner just pre-Christmas, and one was a vegetarian and one was a vegan. So I did a whole Christmas vegan dinner, and I went, oh my God, I've never done this before. Let me try it. And I love to experiment. And so, yes, I read, I do jigsaw puzzles, love jigsaw puzzles because they help. And this sounds really crazy, but this is what I do. I do crazy things. My two things I do to meditate, jigsaw puzzles and weeding. Weeding a garden will allow you to meditate because you're not thinking about anything else except trying to get that grass out or that nut grass or whatever it is and weeding it. So it does empty your mind.
Well, one thing I do for meditation?
What?
Blow bubbles.
Excellent.
And let me tell you something, Brains. I know this may sound weird, but I have a bubble machine. I paid $45 for that thing at Disneyland. And the bubbles will go out. But with my mind, I watch the bubbles and I actually can encourage it to go up or to go down. And then I look and see how far it travels. And in my mind, I'm saying I'm putting a bubble of protection around my thoughts. Maybe I'm carrying away some negative energy, whatever it is. But bubble meditation is a lot of fun. let's go back to your kitchen. If you were an
Yep.
appliance, and that I'm sure it's a beautiful kitchen with big windows with the sun beaming in off the deck there, well, what appliance would you be in that kitchen?
What appliance? Agitator.
Really?
Yep. Because I would look at things that are not working well and align them to make them smooth. Anything that's rocky and hard and not working well, I would find out what the blockage is and make it run smoothly.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
I talked to another one of my guests, and she told me that she would be the knives. I was like, okay. She sliced and diced everything and put it in order. Me, I would probably want to be the garbage can. Because
you get fed well.
I want to be the place where people dispose of the things that no longer serve them.
Yeah.
You know, to get rid of the rubbish. You know, and to pour in the good things. If you could time travel, Dr. B, go back to the past, stay here in the present, project to the future, where would you land?
If I could go back in past, where would I land? I would like to land somewhere between Marie Curie's lab and I actually would like to be part of Leonardo da Vinci's workshop. I would love to be Leonardo da Vinci's, you know, when he has these thoughts about, I'm going to design a submarine, or I would love to have been part of that and have those discussions.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you could go back and have a conversation with a 25-year-old Dr. B, what would you say to her?
Have confidence in yourself. So at 25, I was married, I had 2 kids, I had 5 staff, and I was running a business. And I was studying part-time. I'd probably tell her she was crazy, but keep going because it would make a difference. And just embrace every opportunity rather than think that it won't work out.
Okay. And if you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a hard one. Sometimes I think I'd like to be a bird because, you know, you can actually see all the things. But I was partway through writing another book called The Frog and the Dragonfly. And so I'm not sure whether I'd be either one of them. But you think about a frog stays in a pond and it doesn't get to see much. But a dragonfly also is, I don't know if you know, but dragonflies actually start off as a nymph in the mud in a pond, but they actually manage to get up in the leaves and they manage to fly and go everywhere. They look beautiful. And so they can bring back a lot of information to the frog in the pond. So I've often thought about that as well. So I don't know, but I do love nature. I spend a lot of time with nature. And it feeds my soul.
Well, that's so important because you have fed our soul and our minds and our hearts, and you have given a beautiful blueprint as to what it looks like to be the leaders of this next generation, this next century, because there's so many other nuances that are involved, but the core value is kindness, respect, communication, and accountability. And if you
being prepared to ask.
And being prepared to ask. Yeah. And working with great people like Dr. Jamnik. I mean, you know, what better teacher? She's been there, she's done that, she has the resilience, she has the follow through, and she's willing to share that information. She could have kept it all to herself, Brains. I want you to connect with her. I want you to go in, follow her on social media, look at her website, consult her, have her come out wherever you are in the world to speak on your behalf. She is going to this economic forum, and I wish I was there in the room. I'd be that dragonfly in the room because it's going to be powerful and it's insightful. Okay, so please tell my brains how to get in contact with you so that they can get more information.
Oh, so send me an email, Brenda, BRENDA @org C for change, D for development, CD.com. Now that's a dash, not an underscore. And even though I'm in Australia, there's no AU. So you'll also find me on LinkedIn, and you'll find me on Facebook. But email me because I respond pretty quickly, and also link with me on LinkedIn because I hope to be starting to do some more posts shortly and share my knowledge with you as well. So that's Brenda@org-cd.com.
Brains, this is not the last time that you're going to hear from Dr. Brenda, because what I'm going to be bringing back is podcast potlucks. And that is where we are going to have subject matter experts, 2 or 3. We're going to be able to bounce information off each other, share that information, and glow in the sunshine, okay? Because we have a lot to uncover. This is the time of the woman. Men, we love you too, but now it is time for us to really make an imprint and show you how it's done, okay? Right here on the edge. Go in, love, like, share, and subscribe. Right there. Love, like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. And we're on about 20 different podcast outlets. We want you to share in the information. We want you to share in this cultural revolution of change. AI is not going to be able to touch what the human heart has embedded in us. Okay, so don't worry about that. We'll talk again real soon. Thank you so much, Dr. B. You are the best.
Thank you. Cheers now.
Have a good day.
Thank you.